countdown starts. I'm just waiting for it to buffer, but meanwhile, let us know where in the world you want to visit. Or if you rather visit the outer space to another galaxy outside of the Milky Way, or deep sea and see what kind of creatures live there and just go diving in the dark. I mean, they're both dark places. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. We're officially live on YouTube. So you're welcome to follow along on YouTube if running Zoom is kind of taxing your computer, running XD at the same time. But we are here. Oh, if you guys are new to Design Buddies, I'm Grace. I founded Design Buddies. I probably said this a million times, but welcome to join. Design Buddies is the largest design community in the world, and we host a lot of fun workshops like this. And for Product Splash, we're running a 5-week program with product buds that y'all have been plugging away with their fellow buddies. And we're so excited to have Matt Ray on for an intro to XD workshop. And don't worry, we haven't ever touched any like design or prototyping tool. Matt will go through all the basics you need, so y'all can help each other just complete your projects and bring your ideas to life. Next week, Matt will also be hosting a prototyping workshop where you can further bring your ideas to life, make them super interactive in XD. Matt is also a mentor in Product Splash, so feel free to just sign up for office hours spots as well if you need any help on your project or anything, need any feedback on your design, so that's also available with you. And make sure to connect with Matt with the links that Jock just dropped in the chat. And yeah, with that, I will leave the floor. Oh, also, please plug your LinkedIns in the spreadsheet. I'm sure if you've been to other Product Splash events, you probably have that spreadsheet, but that's available for you in case y'all want to connect with each other and talk about design, project, life, career, anything else. With that, I will pass the floor on to Matt.
You're going to pass the whole floor. Well, thank you, Grace.
Yeah.
All right. So to start, I saw a couple of questions in chat that I'll address right off the bat. So you can open XD and follow along if you have it downloaded. You should have all received your code for 3 months of Creative Cloud, I believe. So yeah, definitely feel free. Today we're going to cover a introduction to XD. I'm probably going to be moving pretty quick because we have just under an hour. So you might not be able to follow along exactly, but definitely try things out. And if you have questions, we can work through those. And yeah, so a question on the iPad, I'm going to answer that in a minute. So we'll just get started. And feel free to drop your questions in chat. I have not done 2 events today, but it's 8 o'clock here, so my brain's not fully functioning. But we're going to get through this together. So I'm Matt Ray. As Grace mentioned, I'm a design advocate for XD. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or send me an email, but I'm also in Discord, so you can find me there. Ask me questions. I might not be super quick to respond to chat because there's lots going on, but if you book mentor hours with me, I'm happy to chat and walk through things. So as I mentioned, today we're going to learn about getting started with XD. And for those of you unfamiliar or haven't played with it yet, XD is a UX UI design and collaboration tool. It's essentially a design platform. It integrates with other Creative Cloud tools and has a lot of plugins. So we consider it a bit more of a platform for really efficient UX design workflows. That being said, a lot of the stuff we do and what I'm going to show you is really designed to help make your life easier, make things more efficient so that you can focus on the design work that you're doing rather than the technical aspects of achieving it. And because we only have an hour, you can go to this link, and I'll paste a link in the chat as well. This is our Learn Guide. So if you want to tackle any projects, learn some new techniques, learn about different features, you can come here. There's videos and articles from Howard Pinsky, myself, and Danny Beaumont. So we all just write different tutorials here. You can check them out and learn XD. So we'll jump right in. And to get started, I just want to draw attention, because you're doing a project here in XD with this program, one of my favorite features is the ability to actually present in XD. So you can see right here, this is a preview window that I was playing these slides in. and I'm essentially navigating it like a slideshow. But one of the advantages in the Mac app, so there's Mac and Windows for the editing and previewing and building of your designs. You can preview your designs on the iPad app or iPhone app as well, but you can't edit them there. But on the Mac app, you can actually go ahead and record your prototype. So you can walk through and record a video of your prototype. There's some workarounds, and we can dig up some links in Windows, but you'll just need to use the built-in screen recorder in Windows to do that. And so when I close this window, that was actually another live preview window of my design. So as I edit things here, I can preview them live and get a sense of how they feel, whether it's on a device on that preview window. If I want to connect to a phone, I can plug one in, a phone or an iPad or an Android device. I can plug them in here and then preview that same design live on a device. Great if you're designing a mobile app in this project. So to get started, I'll give you a quick overview here of the interface. If you're familiar with other Creative Cloud apps like Photoshop and Illustrator, or even familiar with Sketch and Figma, some of this is going to look familiar. The difference here is that we've really focused on keeping it lean and simple, and really giving you the tools you need when you need them. So you'll notice that as you click on different things, these settings are going to change. And then I have 3 different modes. So as I go through these different modes, design, prototype, and share, things are going to change a little bit, and they're going to give me just the tools I need when I need them. Now you'll also notice design, prototype, and share kind of follows along with the design process that you're going to be following in this project. So obviously we're going to start in design. This presentation is going to kind of follow design, prototype, and share as well. But just know that you can toggle between them at any point. So if you're starting in wireframing, you can easily prototype at that stage too and bounce back and forth. It's dynamic, everything's in one app, so you don't have to export images and go and string them together. It's all right here. And then you'll also notice as you hover over different elements like the rectangle, in brackets, you're going to see keyboard shortcuts for each of those features. I use keyboard shortcuts a bunch. It's a great way to speed up your workflow once you're comfortable. I'm going to try and just do it visually on the screen here so that you can see it, because I don't have a camera on my keyboard, but just know that they're there. And then in the bottom left, you're going to see 3 different icons here. One is libraries, and this is going to default to open your document assets. This is all your colors, character styles, and components from this document. And components are like symbols. We're going to talk about that. The second one is your layers panel. This is where you can access all the layers and elements, move things around, reorder them, rename them, lock them, export them, etc. It's all going to be done from here. And then finally, I mentioned to many of you in mentor sessions about plugins, in particular the whiteboard plugin. So this plugins tab is where you can access those. You can click on the plus to go and add more. So we're going to talk about that at the end as well. And then through the whole thing on the right, this is called your property inspector. So this is where your controls are. This is when you click on something, you're going to be able to transform it, change layout, change the appearance. All of those controls are going to be on the right-hand side. And then clicking this play button just opens up that preview window we were talking about. So we're going to dive in. First off, and this probably doesn't have as much relevance to you in this current project, but if you are used to working in Sketch and maybe you have some Sketch sample files or you have some templates you want to use from Photoshop and Illustrator, all of these can be opened in XD. All you have to do is right click on them and hit open in XD, at least on Mac. It's probably something similar on Windows. And then libraries, like I mentioned here, these are all created or connected to Creative Cloud. So you can actually share these between applications. So if you add some colors to a library from Photoshop or an image, you can pull that into XD using your library. So you can see I have a bunch of different shared ones here, like an adventure photos. I can just click and drag and pull that into my document. Or if I'm using something like this brand asset library where I have some components, this was created in another XD document. I can pull these in from the library and start using them in here. So you might find these showing up if you download UI kits. And if you are looking for any UI kits to help you get started, you can go up to the file menu, and hit Get UI Kits. There's some default platform ones. So if you're designing any apps for this project, you can check them out here. You're probably not designing a Microsoft Windows app, but if you are, it's there. And then you can always click on More UI Kits, and that's going to open up a page that looks like this. And you can download a bunch of different UI kits to get started, including a wireframe kit. So that should help you get started. Beyond those integrations, like I mentioned, a lot of this workflow is designed to, a lot of the features are designed to really make your life easier when designing. And so one of the first ones I want to show you is going to be really handy in wireframe stages, and it'll be helpful later on as well. But let's say you're designing at a page. You can, obviously this is not in a wireframe state, but let's say I'm wireframing out a card for this section. Now, typically I probably want these filled out, so I could just copy and paste these. And I can just hold Option Alt and click and drag on things to duplicate them. But what you're going to notice is that as soon as I go to start making changes or iterating on a design, if say I want this title in the middle, maybe I want this centered, you're going to notice that the other two cards are not changing. And so that's going to be a pain later on, and it's going to burn up a lot of your time because then you're going to have to copy and paste or make the changes elsewhere. So to help you out with that, hold on, I just need to fix this alignment. It's going to drive me nuts. Whatever. Anyway, you can select this card, and up in the top right, you can click on Repeat Grid. And what this is going to do is a little bit magic, but I have these two handles here, and if I click and drag on them, it's going to repeat the cards for me, and then I can easily adjust my spacing. Now, if I kind of want to make sure things are aligned on the right here, I can toggle on guides and just hover over the left side of my screen and drag in a guide, and it's going to snap into place. And now I can use that as kind of a reference point and align up my cards. Now that I used that repeat grid, watch what happens as I go and edit this first card. Everything kind of snaps into place. It's all the same on each card. And now I'm saving time by making changes because it applies everywhere. Actually magic. You're right, Felix. Now, I haven't actually shown you the magic yet, though. That's the cool part. So now that we have this design, maybe we're going to build out, start adding some color. Maybe we want to start building out a higher fidelity version. We've gathered some feedback in share mode, and the flow works out, the layout looks good. So I can just start kind of coming in here and filling things in. So here I select some shapes. I can use the hotkey I to pull up my color picker. And I'm just actually going to select this color, fill in those shapes. Now I can also save these colors to my assets panel. So if I come to document assets, I can, I'm just going to delete. You can see I can also apply colors here just by clicking on them. But I'm going to delete all of these old ones and bring back the yellow, and then just click on this plus, and I can add this, and I can call this my rating yellow or whatever I want. So this is a nice way of documenting your colors, because then you can apply them, and maybe this color is going to be blue. And what happens when you edit a color? So let's say we want to edit those stars and actually make them a bit more orange. Now that we've applied that color to all these shapes, all we have to do is come in here and edit them, and voila, it's going to apply everywhere once again. Super nice. So that's how to save colors. You can do the same thing with character styles. Now I've got my cards laid out. That's great, but you'll notice they all say card title. And usually we want to test our designs with some real data so that we make sure we don't break the design, especially when designing in different languages. So what we can do is we can leave full screen view so that I can pull another window in. And I have just a bunch of different assets here. And down here, I have some text files with different show titles. So this is just a file with 6 different show titles. And I want to build a show title card here. So all I need to do is pull this text file over, and this is where the real magic's going to happen. Hover over that text box and release, and it's going to fill in all those show titles, just like that. So one click, I've filled in half my design with text. Now, what if we want images? You're going to say, well, that's not possible. I can't possibly fill this in with images. Well, let's go to the movie section, grab some images, and just hover over this rectangle, and boom, we have images. So just like that, in a few clicks, Repeat Grid has made me do 3 times the work in one card. So mind blown, actually awesome. So you can do this in a bunch of ways. And then let's say I decide I want a second row of grid. Boom, I just pull it down and I've got a second row of grid. Efficient. That's what we like to see. I don't want to have to be fiddling with pixels. I hate fiddling with pixels. Some people love it. I don't. So next, we're going to move into another related feature. And this is great if you're working with components or you build up a design system or are using a UI kit. You're often going to have a sample button, much like this. And it might say primary button, might say something boring like button. But basically, it's been designed, it has the text, it has all the proper spacing around it. But then if you go to copy it and you say, okay, now this is going to be a save button. And now you're like, oh, well, that's not sized properly. So you can resize it if you want. And I just hold Alt Option again if I'm resizing things so I can resize them symmetrically. And then I can hold Alt Option again and actually hover over the space and try and measure that. But if you're doing that every time you place a button, you're really going to hate the process. So what you can do is you can turn on something called padding over here on the right. And you can see it's going to auto calculate all those distances. So you don't have to worry about it. And now when you type in save, the button's just going to resize. Simple. I don't have to worry about that. Now it also works on more complex objects. So here you can see I don't have padding enabled. I have this another repeat grid. And so I can resize that. Maybe I just want one to show, but the modal doesn't resize. So I could resize it and you're seeing a preview here of the next feature we're going to talk about. But again, I don't want to have to do that every time and I shouldn't have to. So what I can do is I can take this group, turn on padding, and that's once again just going to measure that space here between the inside and the outside. And now I'll just simply resize it and I'm done. Boom. Now we have another feature in here. So I lied before. This is going to be, you'll see that feature in 2. But this inner content, what if we want to rearrange that? Maybe that image shouldn't be up top. Maybe the text should be up top and maybe the image should be bigger. How do we handle a dynamic layout like that? Well, in this inside group, I have something called a stack enabled. And this is can be vertical or horizontal, but basically, rather than moving each element and moving the next one up, I just click and drag and it's done. And I can resize it. I can reposition it horizontally if I want to. So maybe I'll just move it up like that and align it to the left. It doesn't look great, but I can do it and I can try different things out. So maybe I'll center align it. Oops, center align it, make that big again. Boom, I'm happy with that. But you'll notice the whole modal adapted, and all the content adapted too. And then I can click in here and adjust the spacing as well if I want. So just super handy, smooth features. Stacks is really handy for doing things like that, but it can also be helpful in situations like this. So maybe you've built out a wireframe and you're trying to get feedback and people suggest, oh, your research indicates that maybe top rated should be the top section. Well, without stacks, you'd have to kind of drag top rated up, get it in position, probably zoom in. Oh, I'm a pixel off. Okay. Grab the next one, bring it down. And then you have to remember, oh, what was the spacing I was using between these sections? Was it 46, 48? Oh, well, that looks good. And then this one's 82. Whoops. So what you can do is you can grab all of these, group them, and then turn on a stack. And not only can you fix that spacing issue by holding Shift and S and getting global spacing, but you can now just click and drag and easily swap your sections rather than fiddling with them. No one wants to fiddle. So that's stacks, padding, and repeat grid. Now, some of you have been asking, do I start web? Do I start mobile? And you might be kind of moving in between both. So let's say you start with mobile and you want to now test out what a tablet design might look like. You could move all the elements, all these little widgets on your own manually, but you're in XD, you don't have to. There's a feature here called responsive resize, and it's almost always set to auto by default when you select an element. Like you literally don't have to think about it. Again, I'm just going to hold Option Alt here. I have this whole design selected. I'm just going to drag it out. Boom. Tablet. Done. 1.5 seconds. Now I can override things and I can say, okay, I actually want this button to be fixed in the middle. So then you can come into manual mode with that button selected and say, I'm actually just going to pin it, or actually I don't want it pinned. I want it fixed width. And it actually already made that adjustment for me when I resized it. So now as I resize things, that button is going to remain in the middle, but the rest of the design is still auto. So that's sweet. You can do it with modals too, real nice. Just adjust everything. You don't need to think about it, you just resize it. Now, if you're doing something more complex like a dashboard, it also works here too. So I'm just going to hide guides. And you can hide guides with a nice little shortcut. Up in the view mode, go guides, and then you have these show and lock guides. Handy little features. Now, let's say this chart, I don't actually want it to be full width. I want to pull this chart up. Now, this is a pretty complex chart. There's some lines, there's dots, they're all separate. There's lines in the background, there's axis labels. There's a lot going on, but I have responsive resize set to auto. I've done nothing else. I can just click and drag on it. Boom, done. I can slide this up and now it's hanging over the edge a little bit. So I can just resize that and look at how it just kind of nicely collapses the spacing in here. Sometimes you might need to adjust things a couple of pixels because it's doing all this predictively, right? It's trying to read the design and resize things. I'd say about 90% of the time it gets it right. Sometimes you might want to make an adjustment. You can see here, it just does things really well. In this case, I might want to move these over or adjust this label, but for the most part, you're going to nail it 90% of the time. So that is a handy look at a lot of the layout features. I did mention you can turn on guides. So by dragging from the left and the top, you can drag guides in. And what you'll notice in the pink there is it actually gives you nice relative measurement. So you don't have to do math all the time and say, okay, my artboard's 100 pixels. This is 70, so that leaves 30. It'll just give you the numbers. It's simple. It's what it should do, right? So you can do that. You can also turn on these grids. So you can turn on a column grid if you're working on like a responsive web, or you can turn on a square grid. And where the square grid's handy is that without it, you can actually move objects around using your keys. So just using arrow keys, you can move by 1 pixel. If you hold shift, you can move in increments of 10. And the same applies for resizing. If you hold command or control, you can resize things using your arrow keys and shift as well. But what if you don't want increments of 10? Well, that's where the square grid comes in. Here I have it set to 8. And so now if I hold shift and use arrow keys, that shape is going to move in the increments of 8 along the grid. So that's super handy, especially if you're working on an 8-pixel grid kind of system for your design. And that's just enableable by selecting the artboard and then toggling on your grid. Okay, now I'll give you a quick rundown as well. If you are new to design tools, when we're styling objects, all of our controls for styling are down here in appearance. I showed you how we can kind of fill things in by using these document assets on the left. And we can also style our text. We can right click and say apply border color, and you're going to see that's applied here. I probably wouldn't use this color combo. It looks pretty rough. But all of your controls here. So I can use opacity, which is really handy for prototyping, which we're going to talk about in a bit. I can also use my number keys to change my opacity though. And this probably isn't going to show up because of a background. So my invisible keyboard, But if I hit 1, I can go to 10, 2, 20, 3, 30, etc., up to 0, which is 100 again. So that's a really handy way of just quickly adjusting your opacity. You can change blend modes, which you might not get into, but these are like in Photoshop. So if you have a color or over top of an image, you can change how it looks. And then your fill. So you can use solid, linear, radial, or angular gradients to create different looks. And all of your controls end up on the canvas. So you can quickly like tap in here, add new colors, I should record all the designs I make live because they're all terrible. But you can create cool different effects like this using your gradients. Then you can apply borders. You can change how the border appears, whether it's inside, outside, curved edges, etc. And you can even make it a dashed border as well if you want. So all of your visual controls are here. And then there's also some effects like inner and drop shadows, background and object blur. Whenever you see a drop down like this, that means there's another option available for that checkbox. So that's a very quick rundown on visual styling. Now, if you're planning to build out interactions in your design or prototype, components and states are going to be really helpful. So a component is a reusable element, much like we built that button early on with padding installed. You can save that as a reusable component and then just drop it into your design wherever you need it. So for instance, I have a lot here. You can see I have this primary button and I'm just going to drop it on this artboard. That's actually what this one is too. And this is the main component. So the main component is the one that basically gives all the instructions. It's in charge and it sends out the changes to the instances or the copies of that main component. So you'll see that here, if I change this background color to pink or red, it'll change on the other ones. But if I change it down here, it's just going to apply to that one instance. So when I'm doing things to an instance, I'm overriding them. So wherever you are making global changes, you want to make it to this main component. And you can tell it's the main component because of this solid diamond. The instances, if I can get my keyboard controls right, are hollow. So they have a green border. And then what we can do is we can create different states. So you can see when I have this selected up here, I have all these different states or variations. And these allow me to create different styles. So if I'm on hover state, active state, inactive state, demo state, which is a fake state I made. Oh boy. But here, the default state and the hover state and the toggle state come with pre-configured interactions. So when you click plus, you'll see these here with a lightning bolt next to them. So that means that they can be used out of the box. So what happened is I had created this hover state and I applied a couple instances here. So I have padding enabled, I think. No, I don't. But you get the idea. I can change the text here. But when I play this artboard, I haven't gone into prototype mode or anything. I can just mouse over this right away, and XD is going to generate that interaction for me so I can simulate a hover on the web. Really nice. Now I can do that also with toggle states. So here I have a checkbox, and I can make this into a component. You can see here I have my toggle. I should probably put this all in a group. And then I can change this to my toggle switch and make this a component. Now, you're going to get these nice productivity tips too while you work. So if you're doing things like copying a lot of elements, you might get a hint to use repeat grid. They're super handy. But now what I can do is I can come over, because this is a component in the main component, I can click plus, create toggle state. Now all I have to do is design the toggle state. And when I'm selected on it, that's when I'm designing it. So I'm going to come in here. I'm simply going to move these two ellipses over. And then I'm going to change the fill here. Maybe bring it up. And you can see I have some nice inner shadows there too, creating a nice texture. So I have my default and my toggle. I'm not going to go to prototype mode. I'm just going to play this and click on it. And just like that, XD animates it for us. So super nice to have that. And you can get really advanced. You can make fancy radio buttons like this with component states. And these are all reusable elements. So once you design them once, you can just copy and paste them throughout your design and all the interactions work. And just to round out the design section, because I think we have some questions, here's some different examples of where you can use states. So these are all little interactive elements that just work out of the box. And these are great because you don't need multiple artboards to achieve them, and you can get better feedback when you're doing user testing. So you can build these from square one when you're wireframing, and then just kind of build up the fidelity as you go in that main component. And then all your instances of it will also get those changes. So if it was all grayscale and you start adding color, as long as you apply that to the main component, the other instances will get that if you haven't overridden them with anything. And when you override, so say you change the text value, for instance, if I change this text value to save, it's still going to receive all the other updates like border radius. You can see there. I'll bring this, whoops, positioning, it'll receive that, but it'll receive all those color changes and everything. All I've done is override the text label. So super handy components. I'm going to take a pause here, looking at the time, and see what questions we have. A lot of good feedback, it looks like. Can we document effect styles as assets? So currently, no. You would want to save those as a component, but what you can do is it's really easy to copy and paste effect styles. So let's say that I don't know, I had that stylish rectangle. I think it disappeared. But if we make a nice stylish rectangle with we'll go linear this time. Nice pink to blue. And then I draw even like a circle, maybe. And let's put a drop shadow on this rectangle. I'll zoom in here so you can actually see what's happening. Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll make it like obnoxious so that you can see it. Yeah. So let's say that I want to apply that styling. I don't have a way to save that. I can save the background style. So I can save my colors, and it's going to add that gradient. It's going to add the border. So I could click and add that. But if I want to copy all the styling, I can copy this and go paste appearance. Boom, done. And what's cool is I'll show you what that looks like in prototype mode, because you can actually copy and paste the interactions in prototype mode, doing the exact same thing. My live designs are just misunderstood. Yeah. I need people with champagne staring at them. Can you store, I should sell them as like abstract NFTs or something. Can you store stock photos in the document assets for a project so you don't have to open a separate folder and drag? Yeah, so great question. There is some plugins to access Adobe stock. You can also, from in here, I believe, unless they changed it on me, there was a way to search stock images. But you can also go to free.adobe stock.com. No. stock.adobe.com/free. And there's about 70,000 free assets there. And so from here, if I was signed in, there's an activate license button. And when you license a free image, you can select a library to store it in. And obviously I'm storing mine in stock images. And so you can store them there if you want and add them into your design. And what's nice is that these get synced back. So if you just load a sample or something, you can license it later. And you can, from the plugins, license just a sampled image. So the watermark will appear, and then you can decide if you want to license it. But in terms of in your document assets, right now, you can't store an image in here because it's an XD based library, but it's really easy to just click back and go into a folder. Well, it's a different library. It's not even a folder. and grab one. But yeah, unfortunately right now you can't save an image. Actually, let me see if I'm lying. Okay. Yeah, no, you can't. There's a couple different differences in depending on where the library came from. Is there a way to share a preview of a design for people to test out? Yes, we're going to get to that very quickly. Assuming the bread and butter of XD is mainly the use of groupings, repeat grids, and padding. Actually, no, that was some magic before the magic. XD's real power is prototyping, which we're going to get to next. Prototyping, collaboration, sharing. Yes, XD has real-time collaboration and co-editing. I don't have that demo set up because I don't have another machine here, but and they're really hard to drive. I can't mouse with my left hand very well. But if you were to invite people, you can hover over this and you can click on it. And then here you just add in their Adobe IDs. So you would invite them to the file. They join here, and then you're going to see a little floating cursor, kind of like Figma, a little bit different styling. You can see their selections. You can click on them and follow them around in the document. So that's all here. You just want to make sure you're on the same major version of XD. And yeah, check out the link Jennifer just shared. That's the getting started section of Learn. So that's going to walk you through all of that, and you can see that in action. Again, limited time here. Yes, UI Faces is also great for avatars, as Jack mentioned. And if there's time, I can show you that in the questions. We'll kind of like spill over for about half an hour if you do have more questions. And looks like we've covered it. All right. Feel free to hang on to questions if they're burning in your mind. But now we'll jump into that bread and butter, in my opinion, Adobe's bread and butter. And that's prototyping. So there's been tools for designing static screens for a long time. So there are many advantages in XD, like repeat grid and stacks and padding versus designing mockups in Photoshop. And there's a lot of artboards, so you can lay things out in flows, right? A lot of UX design is flow-based. We're telling a story, there's a journey, it's not just a single screen. And so that's a really important thing. That's why XD excels at that. And part of that is adding those interactions, adding expressiveness into a design to really tell the story. You can't really articulate what the end product is actually going to feel like without some interactions and prototyping that. So at the backbone of a lot of the cool features of XD's prototyping is auto animate. So if you've used Figma, you might compare this to Smart Animate. Same rough thing, different title. Probably the OG of this was Keynote, back with Magic Move in the day. So if you've ever used Keynote and like moved the logo between slides, corner to corner, same basic principle applies. So it's all kind of linear animation. And just on a side note, there's some cool things coming at Max at the end of October. So if you're interested in where prototyping is going, tune into Max. Now, the base of this is you can do really simple transitions, and you might want to do that when you're wireframing. You don't want to burn a lot of time like perfecting an animation when everything's gray and like blocked out. So we could start by just doing a simple transition. And so let's say I want to transition to this page. Maybe I'm going to have this circle expand. Now in prototype mode, I can select any object on the artboard, make that my trigger. And I'll pull up the layers panel just so you can see what's happening here. But I can click and drag on this, drop it to the destination artboard, and it's going to fill in some inputs for me. I'm going to start with just basic transitions. We can do things like dissolve, slides, push. I'll start with a simple dissolve. There's nice easing controls. So if you want to experiment, sometimes snap and bounce can create a really cool effect. So we'll play with that in a second. But this is just our super simple transition. And what's nice is that I can actually keep this layer panel up while I'm designing so I can see it live again, right? So clicking on that, basic dissolve, I could achieve that with InVision probably, just dissolving between images, but that doesn't really give the effect that I want to do. So if I'm handing that to developers and saying, okay, now see this, but imagine this, you don't need to tell them to imagine it. We can just take this connection, change this to auto animate, and get a cool effect. Now we can add one coming back just so that we can complete the circle. And now we get this nice expanding circle that actually illustrates what we want to build. So that is super key. Now we can expand on this and do things with sliding content. So here I have this body of content with 2 columns, and I want that when I tap on this, it doesn't go to a new page or anything. It stays in the same page. You'll hear this often like single page apps. So this is basically what we're trying to prototype. When I click on this inactive tab, I want to come here. When I click on this one, I want to go back. And so now I can just tap on that and the content's going to slide back and forth. It's not going to like dissolve between pages. So it just feels way more real and authentic to the end result. Now we can expand on that, and rather than tapping on an inactive tab, I mean, we can do that too. We can combine multiple interactions, but we could add a drag gesture onto this content so that when I click and drag on it, I'm actually simulating a gesture with my thumb on a mobile app. So that's super handy if you're thinking about designing interactions on an app. Oh, excuse me. But you can also stack multiple interactions, which we're going to get to. Now, it also works with changing position and size and masking. So you saw how in the repeat grid, we could drop images into a shape. You can do that with any vector shape, rectangle, circle, random shape that you drew. And you can actually use auto animate to create cool morphing shapes, much like the designs in Design Buddies. These little shapes, we could actually animate these if we wanted to with auto animate. Now down here, I just have a couple rectangles. And if I play this, it's already set up so that I click on it, it expands, much like an iOS details screen. I can close it down, and that's the snap in action. It kind of snaps. Let me know if my sound effects are ridiculous. Anyway, now we can come back to design mode, and I can pull open that window of images, and we can drop Deadpool into one, and you can see XD is going to auto mask that. I can double click to edit the mask and the positioning if I want, but I like it. Captures his eyes. And now I can just drag Deadpool into the other one. And just like that, it's auto masked it differently, right? So it's fixed the width. It's still hanging over on the top and bottom, but it's still nicely masked it. And all I have to do is hit play, and it's going to animate that mask really smoothly as well. So it just creates really nice transitions. And to show you how this all comes together, this is a login flow that uses tap, auto animate, and time transition. So if you click on an artboard in prototype mode, you're actually going to get the option of a time interaction. So you have tap, drag, time, keys and gamepad, and voice, which we're going to talk about next. So time is really handy for creating nice delays. So when I click, the logo slides down, and watch how this image just changes masks. We can build in a component state here with the input open, keyboard slides up, nothing here is changing, and then it loads. So this just feels way more real to what the end product's going to be than a static prototype or transitions. But you probably want to start with those transitions to understand the flow and test your flow when you start. Okay, that's auto animate. Let me know if I'm going too fast. Let's see. Yeah, I teased voice prototyping too early. Who mentioned that? Steven. It's the big woo when I show it off. No more questions. Okay. Oh, can this file be posted? I can probably, give you a stripped down file afterwards. I'll post it in the Discord, and you can take a look. I just probably have to strip out images and whatnot. Okay, so next, I want to talk about overlays. So if you're doing anything mobile app, even web, it's likely you have a menu, and it's likely you need to get to that menu from multiple screens. So you don't really want to have to do this. You can take a menu, well, it's not even grouped, that's good, and just lay it over an artboard. Now, the problem with this is that as soon as you decide to make changes to that artboard or make an iteration, then you have to kind of remove this menu, fix what's underneath it, paste it back down. And then anytime you make changes, you could save the menu as a component, so it's all in sync. But if you don't, then you have to make changes everywhere there's a menu, and then you have to track all the interactions. It just becomes a lot, especially with a big app and big workflow. So in XD, we can do overlays a little bit differently. We can build a separate artboard dedicated to that overlay. And in this case, I've turned off the fill on the artboard so that it's transparent. And the background here is slightly transparent at 87. So I've built this menu, and I can now reference this from any different artboard. So in prototype mode, I'm just going to click on this menu, drag it over here. You're going to see it saved my last setting. So if you're doing a lot of screens in one flow, XD remembers that setting so that you don't have to reset it every time. But this time I'm going to go to overlay, and you're going to get this green box. You can put it into position. And then I'm going to do a slide right. So slide right means it's coming from the left to the right. And let's go with a snap this time. So this is just going to look a little bit like this. Boom. That was a very quick snap, 0.2 seconds. Almost can't see it. And you'll notice I never set up any closeout action here. It just comes pre-canned. So on here, by default, there's this previous artboard type of action that comes pre-canned when you do an overlay. Now, we can also stack things. So you see this plus, I can stack another interaction on this, drag it over, and I'm going to switch it to voice. You'll notice it automatically switches to the next interaction type because I can't have two taps on one thing, but I can have multiple interactions of different types. So in this case, we'll pull out the voice, and I'm going to say open menu. And I'm in Canada, so I'll say please, or sorry, maybe. But I can do that same overlay. I can position it. And in this case, I'm going to change this to a slide down just so that you can see that I'm not doing the same thing. And we'll extend this snap a little bit to 1 second. So now what's going to happen is when I play this, I can still tap on it and close it out, but I can also hold spacebar on my keyboard and say, open menu, please. And the menu is going to open just like that. So you can add multiple voice commands. That's the one that you can stack multiple of. So that's really handy if you want to capture different inputs on a design. Super handy. Now, we can take it a step further. And before I do so, I just need to change one little zoom setting. Okay. The volume meter may have just given that away, but once we're here, so now we've used voice, what if our prototype could talk back to us in like a good way, not in a rude way? It can do both, but it's up to you. So here on this menu, we have this interaction that plays automatically when you close it. Now we can add a new one, and we can go time because this is an artboard. And let's say we'll just set a delay of 0 seconds. And this time, rather than overlay, we're going to go speech playback. And in this case, we can have the app actually read out these menu options and continue building on a fully voice-based workflow. So this could, in theory, be a hands-free, other than the spacebar, workflow. So Joanna is going to help us out here. She's one of 6 different voices. And what I'm going to do is I'm just basically typing out. Now, if this is a text box, which it's not, time, speech playback, films, art. We're just going to read out a couple here, but you can type out all of your menu options. And you notice how I'm kind of writing it how I want her to say it. So at the beginning, we're just going to start with, welcome to Reel. Where would you like to go? I can speak better than I type, apparently. And then you can write this out. And so hopefully the volume is going to be good here. If not, just wave your hands furiously. I'm going to say, Open menu, please.
Welcome to Reel, where we'd like to go. Films, art, videos.
And then it can keep reading, of course, if you put more in there. But yeah, that's voice and speech playback. You can also even switch that over to audio playback. So maybe you're designing out something that's music based and you need to prototype some sounds. Well, I think I have some sounds. I can add a new file, go into my training assets, and I'll pull open a little Tragically Hip that we can play. Open menu, please. And then it can start playing. And I should have picked a track that doesn't build slowly from silence. You can hear it starting to build. I'll get like a big electric drop or something next time. But there you go. So you can add audio, and that's great for things like dimes and chimes and dings and wings. You can put all of those into your prototype as well for nice audio feedback. So here, if we just switch this over to a swoosh, that'll play. And as soon as I play that, you're going to hear that little swoosh. So that's voice and speech playback and audio. Now, quickly, I'm going to come through the scrolling section, and this is going to be helpful for anybody building web apps or even mobile. So there's a really simple way to get scrolling started. When you start with an artboard in XD and resize it from the template. So this artboard tool here comes with a bunch of different templates. You can just click on one and build an artboard. As soon as you resize it, so this one was originally about this big. As soon as you draw it down, you're going to get this blue dotted line. Everything below that is going to automatically scroll when you preview that design. This is the bottom of your viewport. Now I've fixed, you can see fixed position when scrolling. In prototype mode, you're going to see a little pin. That means those won't scroll. So when I play this, stuff underneath scrolls, but I fixed all the menu elements. So that's a really nice way. If you fix anything below this dotted line, you're never going to see it because it can't scroll and it's below the viewport. So only fix things above the blue dotted line. That's really only helpful if you're scrolling in one direction and not the band. But if you have a section where maybe you want to scroll horizontally or you have multiple panels, like in Slack, in XD itself, right? We have a scrolling window here. We have a panable window here. I need a different way to prototype that. So what I can do over here, I have, again, a repeat grid. You're seeing these everywhere. A big gallery. Over here on the transform section, I can turn on a scroll group. This is a horizontal scroll group. And I get more of those kind of viewport lines. So I can drag these over, set my boundaries for the scroll. And I also have one down here with a list of different ticket or venue locations. And I just want to use a vertical scroll group in this case and crop it so that it aligns to the bottom of my content section. Now, I have some book buttons here. If I had those connected to prototypes, those would all still work. This is really just kind of cropping the visual view of it and allowing it to scroll. So if I play this, you're going to notice there's some parallax effects also on this page. Some things are fixed. The background's kind of scrolling. The text is going between layers. A lot of cool things you can do. But then when I get here, I can just hold shift. And because I have a scroll wheel, I'll hold shift and scroll on my scroll wheel. I could also use 2 fingers on a trackpad or click and drag with my mouse. But now I can navigate through this product gallery just like this. And if I scroll down, I'm still scrolling through the page itself. But then if I hover over this section, I can scroll that independently, which is really handy for prototyping. So definitely check out scroll groups up in the transform section. Now, what if I'm building a single page marketing site for my app? And I don't have other pages. I don't want to have to prototype to other artboards. It's all here. I can do that also in XD. So in prototype mode, I'm just going to select my artists button here. And rather than dragging to another artboard, I'm going to drag down to this section I want to scroll to, in this case, Sparrow. You'll see over here, it switches this to scroll to and sets my destination. But if I was to play this, I probably have a really slow will do. There we go. It's going to scroll right to the top of that text section, and that's not really what I want. I kind of want it here, where that's nicely centered, the button's still in view. So what I can do is I can just take this little lightning bolt, drag it to where I want, just like that. And then, boom, scrolls to. And all I need is one artboard. I don't need multiple artboards for all the different menu options, because no one wants that. Now, coming back to scroll groups, this is probably one of my favorite uses for scroll groups, because I came from a job where I was designing with maps all the time and could never really prototype them unless I coded them. But this is just like a skin of Google Maps. These elements on top are all on top of a giant scroll group layer. And this is our horizontal and vertical scroll group, otherwise known as pan. And here I can just click around, drag around my map, and it just kind of flows like it would an embedded map, which is really handy. And I can do things, take things to the next level with some other interactions, like I can zoom in on it, back it off, zoom in, back it off. And even if I'm scrolled over here, it'll zoom in and back off because I'm really just changing the size of the map. And in that case, I'm using 2 artboards. You can do it with states as well. Okay, and then to bring all that together, here's a little quick example of a real site I recreated in XD. We have some nice little hover states. Again, this is using that pre-canned hover. That is too. And then we built some components here with like full screen swaps in the background. So you can create a whole image in the background. And then you can build out nice carousels like this that can also swipe. So a lot you can do with XD's prototyping. And doesn't that just feel more real than kind of sliding between screens? And then to wrap it up, so you can work collaboratively here. And in your layers panel, you can also export any asset. So using this little button here, the mark for export, you can flag things so that if you do a batch export of icons or images, you can flag them through this. But what happens when you want to share? And let's say to start, maybe I want to share this intro presentation. So you'll see these little flags. These are all called flows. And flows allow us to basically flag flows. So maybe you have a mobile flow, a desktop flow, an onboarding flow. You got a bunch of flows. You want to label them. So in prototype mode, when you come to a screen and select it, you're going to see this gray home icon. It's not green, it's gray. And when you click on that, you're going to get this little flow title, and you can call it whatever you want. Just like that. And that's going to become a flow. So that's what I've done here. And that's why you can see some of these little things. So let's say the presentation, I'm going to click on share. It's going to highlight that for me. I can easily swap between them. I can give it a name. It's going to default to the flow. And then I have 4 different options for sharing. So I can share a presentation, which makes sense because it would open full screen and people can just click through it, just like you would see it in the preview window. But let's say I want some feedback from my design team. I want to do a critique. I can share this as a design review, and they can comment and make pins, and you can have a dialogue, an asynchronous dialogue on your design using this tool. Now you can also share development mode, and development mode is going to include everything from design review plus an inspect view so that developers can pick through your design and inspect it and get the code snippets and understand how to actually build and develop it. So we're going to do that just so you can see everything kind of all at once. And I'm going to create this link. You can also click that downloadable assets button, and all those assets you marked for export will be available at the click of a button for somebody to download. So you don't have to like pass things back and forth on Google Drive or Discord. And then you can copy a link, you can embed a link into like Jira and such. There's also plugins for that. And I'm just gonna figure out where this opens over here. And so just like in XD, you can click through and you can get all the auto animation, all those nice rich interactions right here. This is what design review looks like with the comment bubble. So I can place a pin and say, update this please. And if I wasn't logged in, I could leave a name or log in. So I'll submit that. I can reply, I can resolve, edit, delete, because I wrote this one, I can edit it. But all your comments for this screen are going to appear here. And you can toggle on all screen comments or not. So they're going to be divided out by the artboard here. Now, if I'm a developer and I want to come in here, I can click on this spec mode. You're going to see I automatically get colors, viewport, and design sizes. So since they match, they're the exact same. I'm going to get my character styles and look at how, as I hover over these, I can get what is actually happening in there. If I use command, I can click in and select things. I can easily copy that content. So you can see here, it's got two different styles and it's detected that. So I can just do that. I can click on the text to copy it. And I can use copy and paste to copy all the CSS, things like that. So it's really handy for dev handoff. Again, we're super short on time here. So the last thing I want to cover is plugins. Now I can do any of that, and sorry, as I share these, you're going to see this timestamp. So if I update this link, that same link is valid. It's just going to update it with any changes I make. But as soon as I switch to another flow, it's going to have a whole different history because it's a separate link and a separate flow. Ooh, okay. Finally, to touch on plugins, I'm going to just point out a few really handy ones, especially at this stage in your project. So I think I've mentioned to a few people, Whiteboard. This is great. It's got a bunch of different templates, like the How Might We template. So here you can all co-edit in the document. You can jump in, you can share out your ideas, brainstorm, whiteboard like you're in the same room. Each template comes with a little instruction set. And then if you click on this workshop button, it's actually going to walk you through a series of templates to help you kind of figure out your design. Now, I don't know if this is in the rules to use this, but it's a helpful tool. Things like empathy building, it's going to take you through personas, etc. So this is at your disposal in XD. Once you move into wireframes, quick mockup can help. It's got templates, it's got all these pre-built elements. So you don't necessarily need to burn time designing these wireframe elements. You can just lay out a page, do your testing, make sure it's validated, and then start designing out your branded elements for the design. Now, I talked at the top how XD is really handy for presentations. I usually build my own because I'm doing really custom designs. But if you want some really nice designs to start with, presentation plugin has a whole bunch of really stellar templates. And when you build one and just change the text content, you can easily switch themes. But this basically turns XD into a presentation tool like Google Slides or Keynote or whatever the Microsoft one, PowerPoint. Jeez. And you can navigate your slides just like this. And you notice it's changed all my artboards into a slide navigator, and I can click through them. I can even reorder them here. It's pretty powerful. So those are a few really helpful plugins. Also Stark for checking contrast. Jack mentioned UI faces. So this is great for just auto-filling avatars. So if I draw out a shape here, I can select like random user.me and IMDb, apply an image randomly, and we'll see if we get a celebrity or not. I should really put my face into random user.me so when I'm doing demos, it would be really weird if my face showed up. It's not me, don't worry. But just like that, it fills it just like a mask, so I can resize the shape, I can make it a circle, and just like that, I've got a placeholder avatar. And then a bunch more. If you click on plus, it's going to pull open the Creative Cloud app and you can search for plugins. There's a whole bunch here. So if you want to track time, some other good ones are like Google Sheets for populating real data. So there's a Google Sheets thing you can design because there's voice and sound. You can design Google Assistants and then preview them on an actual device. Same with Alexa. So that's really cool. Whole bunch. I recommend you explore this or go to the UI, the plugin menu. Well, if you go to UI kits, you can find the plugins on the website. and it lists out a bunch. So at that, I'm going to pause and grab some questions. So feel free to ask away if you haven't. I'm going to scroll back a little bit. Okay, same question. Yeah, I'll strip this down and then post it. Grace and Jack can let me know what channel is best to post it in, and I can do that.
We can also send it in the email you all registered with
Right.
the event in. And we can also include it in the YouTube recording as well. So y'all can have multiple touch points to access it. And before we start with questions, we'll do a group photo. So
Perfect.
feel free to turn on your camera if you want to be in our group
Stop
photo.
sharing for that.
Yeah. And feel free to use a product splash background if you have it, or use any background you wish. And as we take a group photo, feel free to let us know any questions you have in the chat, or start thinking about what we want to ask. We have about 20 minutes left, so feel free to just think of what questions to ask. We're going to do a static one first, and then a wave one for Instagram story. This is my second Design Buddies event today, so you'll probably see a lot of stories on our Instagram for our event earlier today. So make sure to follow us to see. And if you also learned something new or found something really amazing like voice prototyping or how you can make presentations in XD, feel free to share on your social media like LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and tag Design Buddies, tag Matt, tag XD, tag Product Buds. We would love to reshare. I've been trying to reshare as much as I can and retweet on Instagram and Twitter. So make sure you connect with us, follow us there, so we can make sure to see your wonderful takeaways and stuff and feature y'all. With that, I'll count down a few seconds for y'all to turn your cameras if you want, and then start thinking of what questions you want to ask. All right, 10, 9, 8. Oh, I didn't know Adobe Design has one now. Okay, cool. 7, 6, 5, 4. If y'all need the background, it's in your email for a while ago, but it's fine for now. Where was I? Oh, 4. This is my second time doing this today. 3. Feel free to like grab an object if you want to be in our photo for the wave, if you want to. 3, 2, 1. Okay, just static one first, so just smile. Or wave. You can like peace or dab or I don't know, deers. I know it's been a long day for me. All right, set, smile, say full buds. Full buds. I just get multiple to make sure everyone looks great. All right, we can wave now. Say full buds, or just like say dance, and you can like dance and dab. This is what we do for all of our Design Buddies events. So find it on design.buddies. You'll see yourself on TV. Oh, Matt was drinking water. Let me not get that in there. I did not record that. All right. Sorry, I like stuttered my voice. Hello, Fluffle Buds. We just had a wonderful Adobe XD workshop with Matt, and thank y'all for being part of our Fluffle Buds family and Product Splash. We'd love to see all your creations on Discord. Awesome, cool. We're gonna resume with the Q&A. Hopefully that was fun. We just like to do this to kind of just like, move around for a while, get ready to think of really great questions to ask. Man, this is like a third event of the day, so that's why I'm like my voice, but that's okay.
And you're 3 hours behind me, so
yeah.
you're in rough shape. Okay, so I will resume sharing and look at some questions. Looks like just a lot more good comments, which is awesome. Okay, no questions yet. Anybody have questions? Anything you want to see again? Have explained in more detail? Anything you're like, that's cool, but I have no idea how you did that? Feel free to ask. We've got time. And I want to make sure that this is as useful for you. Uh-oh, I've been listening to Grace too much. This is as useful for you as it can be to help with your project. Can I go over padding again? Yeah, totally. So, okay, we're gonna delete this. So I'll just back this right up. I'll ungroup this object and I'll turn on the layers panel so you can see what's happening, and make this maybe gray. So here I have a text box, and this is simply, actually this is a group. It doesn't have to be a group. I'll just go right to a text box. There's also 3 different types of text boxes. So we have auto width, which this is, auto height, and fixed width. And so knowing those can help change how padding behaves. Right now I keep it auto width just so as the text resizes, the box resizes, and thus the button resizes. If you switch to auto height, it's going to stay a fixed width, and this isn't going to work. Same with fixed, but those are good for using padding when you're doing a fixed width button. So you want the auto width text box, and then you're going to take your background rectangle and you're just going to group these together. I like to name things. Sometimes I'll name them right away, but that helps when you go to make something a component. So this is going to be my primary button. And now I'll switch this back to white just so that you can see it. And now that it's a group, I get these options. Those options won't be there if it's not a group. So now I can just toggle on padding and it's going to generate that. I can also click on this button. So you'll see here, this is like changing all the padding individually. This one's a uniform. So if I click on that, the button's all going to go to 27. If I go back to this, I can adjust these to 65 and 65 and get back to what I was. And so all that's going to do is now I can change this to save. If you click the little squiggly tilde key in the top left of your keyboard and hover over top, once you're in the button, you can actually see those values and drag them on the canvas too if you want to. So hopefully that clears things up for you, Stephen. Jose, what plugins do you recommend when prototyping? Good question. I don't think I've used a plugin prototyping. I don't think I've used a plugin prototyping. That's probably my main answer. There's some user testing, so like usertesting.com for the end state for testing your prototypes. I'll use some data populator plugins if I'm like populating a design, but for the most part, prototyping, I don't even know if there's any plugins that really do anything extra. Was there a shortcut for bringing up guidelines? Yeah. So if you ever like try and do this hover and it doesn't show up, it kind of looks like this, and you're like, oh, I thought Matt said I could hover here. On Mac, it's going to be Command and semicolon. You can also see these here. So in your hide and show, those are your hotkeys. So on Windows, it should be Control semicolon, I think. And then you can also lock them. So if you don't want those to move, because once they're there, you can move them around. You can also lock them, and then you can't move them. So those are a couple hotkeys for guides. You can also copy and paste guides between artboards. So you can see here, RG1, I don't have any. If I come up here, there's no hotkey for this, unfortunately, but you can copy guides, and then you can select multiple artboards. These ones, this may not work because it's different sizes, but you can paste the guides, and you can see it's going to paste that guide into the design. I'm going to have guides everywhere now. How many flows do you typically have in one space? So my documents are probably not a good representation of what you would actually have in a design file. Depends on what you're building, really. Like if you're doing a lot of A/B testing or ABC testing, you might have many flows of the same thing, just copied. You might have mobile and you might have desktop in one. You might have those in separate files. It's really up to you how you organize it. Like you've got lots of space. So it's up to you how big the flow is too. If you have a flow that just fills the page, then you might just want 1 or 2 flows, but it's really up to you. Any tips to help with alignment? Oh, I can't read today. Any tips to help with alignment of elements? Yes. So, I mean, XD does a pretty good job aligning things relatively already. So you have the guides. So if you're interested, like use the layout and square guides, elements will snap to these. So if you're dragging something, you can kind of see it click every time it hits the edge of the guide on the edge of the shape. So that's really handy. But if you're not using those, you're going to notice as you drag elements around other elements, you get all these pink and green lines. So use these to your advantage because this is going to help you just nail the pixels. So here it's centered. Here I can align the bottom and then I get that relative measurement. So if I know I'm working in a 16 pixel grid or something and I want this 32 apart, I can just drag it there. And then when I resize this, I'm going to get lock-ins at the center. Oh yeah, this is a group. If those were ungrouped, I would get this. Boom, like that. So all of these relative measurements can help. If you hold Option or Alt, you can also measure distances. So here, I kind of like measure diagonally. So you can see I get these relative measurements and dotted lines to really help nail precision. You will really only need one flow. Oh, thanks, Jack. So yeah, for your projects, you'll probably only need one flow because that's what you're presenting. But using different flows will be a great way to quickly see what kind of prototyped interaction is working best. Yes, exactly what Jack said. You can read the rest of it. Any other questions? Keep them coming. This is your time. You can also ask me XD questions in the mentor hours if you want, but I guess you also only really get 15 or 30 minutes at a time. So you want to use those wisely. And I'll share that.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to share
I was going to call the other workshops you've done to learn more.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's lots of those.
Yeah, Matt did a workshop on designing interactive games. So designing a Design Buddies game. I'll link all the links as well, and also on Discord and in the Zoom chat. And we also have one on personal branding and two with Julia about logo animation and social media animation using Adobe XD on the Design Buddies channel. So y'all can check that out if you want to see other use cases as well.
So much you can do.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you go to that link I just shared, that's going to have all your getting started stuff. So if you watch that, you'll be off to the races. Dark mode. No, not at the moment. So we get this question all the time. I think Figma gets this question all the time. No, we don't have dark mode. Basically, there's a team behind all of these tools, and we're frantically trying to prioritize different features. Dark mode's great. A lot of my apps are dark mode, I will admit. But there's a lot of other high value features, and you've seen things like Repeat Grid and all these like efficiency boosters. We're trying to get those done first so that you can really expedite your process. So dark mode's not as high of a priority as some of those other things. Please can you give me more detail on, oh yeah, so the mentor hours, you can sign up for those in Discord. Those are posted, I don't know what cadence, but every week you can sign up for those hours. So look for those in mentors office hours. And then how is a pen compared to Illustrator? So again, at the beginning, I kind of mentioned, I can show a couple cool features, I guess. So I mentioned how XD is kind of a platform for UX design. So the goal here isn't to do everything better than all the other apps. It's to really do UX better, right? UX workflows. So there's integrations with CC apps. So the pen is pretty good, but it's not going to be better than Illustrator at this point. Illustrator is going to have a better pen. It's going to be a better vector editing tool, but it's not a better UX design workflow tool. Same with Photoshop. You have some basic image editing functionality in XD, but if you really want to edit an image, you can actually right click, edit it in Photoshop. It's going to open in Photoshop. And then as soon as you save that document, the changes go right back to XD. So they're all synced together. Of course, I picked my face. That was silly. But if I change I'm not a Photoshop whiz, so my edits are usually pretty boring. And I don't think I did this one right. What did I do? Anyway. Let's say I make my face yellow and save it. It's going to apply back in XD. Like before I can even navigate back to XD, it's saved. So now I'm a yellow circle. But that's the Photoshop tool, and I can copy and paste vectors between Illustrator and XD. So if I really want to use the pen tool, and I'm not happy with it in XD, it covers all of my ground. But if you're really trying to get fancy, and to give you a little tip on that, so when you draw out a shape in XD, again, you can hold shift to lock things in too. So the question about alignment, if you're moving something along an axis, if you hold shift while you're doing it, it's going to lock it into place. So I can double click on an axis, move this. If I hold Alt Option, then I can get my individual movement. And yeah, like the rest of it's pretty straightforward penmanship. But yeah, that's the only thing, like hold Alt Option when you want to move a single handle on its own, and just double click on the vector points to go square to curved. Okay. What's my personal favorite feature or tool in XD? Particularly something that's helped you streamline your design. So mine's kind of like a timeline. I should draw it out, like what new features help me progress. At the start, it was prototyping. So I used to use other tools. I used to use Sketch and Abstract, and it was great. It had its place. But then I wanted to show interactions more. And I actually started using XD to prototype charts and prototype little robots moving carts around a factory. And so I would do little animations, export them as videos using the record function, and that helped me illustrate to development teams how I wanted things to look and function. So that's what got me into it. I'd say component states was probably one of the next big ones. Of course, repeat grid and stacks and padding. But component states for me, I'm big on prototyping. And so component states took prototyping to the next level because I could add those interactions really easily. I know it really well, so I can do a lot of intricate things that are reusable. So that really took things to the next level, but auto animate is at the base of that. So arguably auto animate is one of my favorite features. But stacks is also, you can do a lot with stacks and padding that I did not touch on today. Is there a polygon masking tool on XD? So masking, I'm just going to keep nursing my voice here. So I can do masking in a few different ways. Let's say, oh, we want a polygon, not a shape. Say we want, look closely here. This is a polygon. I didn't show you how you can edit those. You can drag these little things to curl. You can indent them like this. You can also change all of these settings in the property inspector if you really want. I don't know if this is actually zooming in for you. But if you do like less than, greater than 3, you can create a heart. So if you're doing anything with hearts and likes, that's a quick hack. But in terms of masking, if we pull in an image here, good old Deadpool, you'll notice this time I just dropped it on the canvas. If I drag an image into a shape, I can fill any shape or vector path, right? But I can also just bring an image in, and then if I pull the shape up top, I can right click, mask with shape, Shift Command M on a Mac, and then I can double click, adjust that mask, resize the image. And so that's going to work on either of these shapes. Well, in that case, I dropped it in. Oops, what did I do? Something just crashed. All right, we're still live. We're still live. Something over here just went crazy. Let me undo that again. Whew, worked. Okay, so I can mask this one too, and just by selecting them and masking them. And of course, I can do that with any vector path. So, oops. Oh, I think I multi-masked that one. Ignore what I did there. But if I had like a vector path too, I could edit that, make a cool blob, and then drop an image in that. And that's going to work in the same way. So I can either mask a shape by layering them together, doing Shift Command M or Shift Control M, or dropping an image directly into the shape. So yes. Oh, I think I lost the chat. There's the chat with a lot of hearts. Okay. Well, that's a weird heart emoji. I haven't seen that one. Okay. Figured we could just bring up Photoshop to do it. Oh, for image masks? I mean, you can edit the images once they're in a mask, but you can do it either way, probably. It's probably better to do it vector though. Cool. Any other questions? Maybe not. Okay.
Maybe not. I'm just gonna record this for our Instagram story. I will try to capture every moment.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You need to send me these because I was supposed to take a picture, but I can't.
Oh, no worries.
Okay. Well, feel free to find me on Discord, everybody, too. If you do have XD questions, I'll try and respond to them as quickly as I can. But yeah.
Yeah, and
Thanks
also
for
check
listening.
out, I'm gonna post right now in learning resources. It's gonna like, I heard it ping in your Discord notification, so that's why I kind of held off on this.
Right, I'm still showing sound.
But yeah, we did 4 other workshops with XG and Design Buddies, and XG, you can like make logo animations, design your personal brand, social media animations as well if you want to learn more. So definitely check that out on Discord. I just posted in learning resources. I posted the wrong channel at first, but I deleted it and I reposted it there. So y'all can find it there. As always, stay positive and test negative. I say this at every single event since the beginning of the pandemic. My dad jokes never but yeah, thank you all so much for coming. And I will stop streaming on YouTube. So goodbye, YouTube.